Absolutely. And one of the things that I learned about taking this diploma program into the rural communities is that there is a tremendous need for services and nonprofits in rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me, in my county alone, one Christmas, because I do Toys for Tots. That wasn't one of my service areas. That was something that one of my board members wanted to do one year, and I just got drug into it. And
Toys for Tots. Everybody has to do Toys for Tots.
I'm not that person. But, I turned that Toys for Tots into Christmas with a Cop. And so now I put the police departments in charge of going to go get the Toys for Tots.
Mhm.
And I put police departments because my organization also has 5 Walmart donation partnerships. So, in other words, 5 super Walmart centers donate big truckloads of toys and household goods to my nonprofit every week. And, those retail donation partnerships are huge, especially when you look at my 990 and that in-kind service line. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to look at, there was a duplication of services up here in my area. There were 27 organizations doing a toy drive at Christmas, giving away toys. When you have that many organizations doing the exact same thing, you're in an oversaturated market.
But since you're Dr. Splash, she says, you know what? We're going to put some flavor on this. We're not going to do Toys for Tots, and not going to do the Angel Tree. We're going to do Christmas with the Cops, right? Because you're already working with the Cops, right? They've already bought into your program. It makes sense, and it ties so perfectly into your mission, because we're just trying to get the Cops to understand the community a little bit better, trying to get the community to understand the Cops a little better. They already know that a lot of these folk who are coming in here need our GED program. We're just building this relationship even stronger.
Yes.
Right? We want people to see the Cops come out and shine and give back. So you're building them as a partner at the same time they're building you, which is why they want to keep this relationship. Right.
And when you talk about keeping the relationship, so I also wrote a residential substance abuse treatment grant for the sheriff's office. And this particular sheriff's office, they are in rural East Georgia, and probably 60 to 70% of the people that they had incarcerated had a substance abuse problem. And they were just sitting there trying to get into a state RSAT program. And the wait time to get into a state RSAT was between 9 to 12 months. Well, most of these people had charges, and they were going to be out before they could even get into a program. So, I mean, it was like this vicious cycle. And the way that I ended up meeting that sheriff was I went to present to the drug task force, because everybody was interested in how I created this community policing program. And then I also built a resource center called the Southwest Georgia Community Policing Resource Center. And it was the only one in the state of Georgia. It's the only one in the nation that focuses on doing nothing but providing community policing services and support to small, rural, persistent poverty law enforcement agencies. And those services and support can be anything from Christmas with the Cop, from my foundation applying for toys and then the police department going to pick them up and giving them out, to I can come in and sit down and do a SWOT analysis with the executive leadership team, and we create a grant strategy.
Yeah.
And I always joke with them. I said, do not ask me for toys, meaning don't ask me for tasers, don't ask me for speed detection equipment, don't ask me for any of that other fun stuff unless you sit down with me and we do the SWOT analysis. And, and so in doing that, I learned that a lot of these cities didn't have drinking water, to the point that the city of Tennille, they were actually having to pay $20,000 a month to bring in water from another county on a tanker truck. Ty, in 2021, they're paying $20,000 a month to put water on a tanker because 3 of the 4 wells in the city were polluted with diethyl chloride. And, so when I talked to the mayor, I was like, I don't know a whole lot about writing water sewer treatment grants. I said, but I do know that you can't keep spending $20,000 a month on water for your city.
Wow.
I do know that in the middle of a pandemic, when 60% of the people in your area couldn't pay their water bill and their water got shut off, and the one thing that we need to be able to do in a pandemic is wash our hands.
Wow.
So, I sat down and I taught myself everything that I needed to know about water tables and plumes and contaminated wells and the effects of industries in these rural communities and the impact of a closed community. I taught myself soil samples and Superfund sites. And, because these communities had nobody fighting for them.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I leveraged my nonprofit because my nonprofit had already had a lot of publicity. I already had the eyes and the attention of a lot of congressional leaders. I already had the attention of several large corporations. And when I started writing this grant to get the water treatment plant, I pulled on all those people. And I told, I shared, I said, there's a community in this pandemic that people don't even have water to wash their hands. And they said, oh my gosh, is that India? I said, no, it's Georgia.
Right here. Is
It's
that
right
India?
here.
Wow. And I love you said I taught myself water. I learned about this stuff because this was necessary in order to get the people's attention, to step into rooms, to know what I'm talking about, right? I had to take a little time to do some research, figure out the terminology. We're missing all of that, I think, when we're proposing a lot of times for things, even with new organizations. And we're from the university, right? We know about research. They make us do research. We like this is like you wake up and you write papers, and that's kind of what you do, right? When you're writing proposals, a lot of times, especially when you're writing these large grants, you're competing with research institutions. A lot of times, you're competing with folk who already have worked in the field and know these things. Sometimes we have newer organizations who don't have that education, right? Which a lot of people have been using it as an excuse not to write stellar proposals or not to know, what goes into programs that they're trying to present, but having to understand that this is all a competitive game and that you have to take a moment to sit back and say, hey, if this is my population, I need to learn everything that I can learn about my population. I need to know what terms they're using in this field. Doesn't matter if you're a doctor or if you're, a scientist or whatever. If you're working with youth, you need to know what's going on with youth. You need to know what terms they're using. You need to know what kind of tools are available to do this thing. You have your GED program. You need to know what kind of certifications are out there. What am I? And we miss that a lot because we get so, I think, wrapped up in like the day to day a lot of times where we're thinking that we're solving a problem. We're thinking that we're saving lives. But then when it comes to funding and those proposals show up and it doesn't look like we have a clue about what it is we're talking about, we end up not getting the award because we're not staying involved in the field in our continuing education.
And can I just add, when we talk about, organizations, because I had a conversation a couple of nights ago with this lady, and she was very frustrated that she had hired a grant writer and she had paid this grant writer all this money. And she's like, I hired her, I paid her, and she didn't get me not one grant. I said, well, what programs do you have? Program? And I said, well, what are your measures? I said, how do you know? I said, what's your outcomes? What outcomes do your programs produce? And she was quiet. I
Mm-hmm.
said, how do you know that your programs are successful? How are you measuring success? And she was quiet. I said,
Mm-hmm.
your grant writer didn't fail you. I said, you failed you.
That's my conversation a lot. I'm like, nobody burns you. You burned yourself because if you're the leader of this organization, there are things that you're supposed to know, right?
Yes.
I think what a lot of people think, Doc, is that they think that the grant writer is supposed to develop their organization. You've heard me
No,
say
your
that.
grant writer is like your CPA. You
Mm-hmm.
you know, your CPA doesn't know what you had in your household unless you take the receipts and your W-2s and everything else. Your grant writer can't pull your story together if you don't know the mission, the vision, if you don't know what program outcomes are, if you don't know what your programs are. Your grant writer can't build your programs for you. They are not your executive director.
Girl, because that's amen right there, right? It's coming
You
from
know,
grant writers everywhere.
and people want to treat grant writers like they're their executive director. Your grant writer is not your executive director. Your grant writer is simply your presentation preparation organizer. A
Yeah.
grant writer is the nonprofit equivalent of a CPA, period. And that's a full sentence.
Period, right? And she is a teacher. So I'm telling y'all, this punctuation is correct. Period. That's it, right? I think grant writers and organizations kind of get frustrated with each other when they don't understand what the roles are. Whenever I'm into a real, grant writing relationship, I let people know up front, there has to be a grant readiness assessment on my end
Mhm.
that's done for, unless you're in my group, but we have to do a readiness assessment because I have to determine whether or not you are prepared to apply for whatever it is that you're trying to, ask for. If you don't have a program, what are we writing about? Right? First of all, you need to hire me to develop your program before
Well,
we get
I even do grant readiness assessments when I go into cities because, when I got the city of Tennille that $11.9 million, of course, all the other cities are like, will you help us? Will you help us? And I said, I will help you, but I need to see that you are grant ready because
Mhm.
every rural city is not grant ready. Some rural cities didn't even have financial audits. And I was like, if you don't have a financial audit, you're not getting any federal money.
Mhm.
And they want to give me all of these excuses. Well, so and so died and so got fired and so retired. I said, I don't care about any of that. I said, I'm sure that impacted your operations. I said, but at the end of the day, you're running a whole city, not tea time with Miss Molly. And I said, so please go find somebody to audit your financials. Once you get your financials audited, come back and we can sit down and have a conversation.
Mhm.
One city that I tried to work with, they had let an employee go. That employee went in, deleted all of the backdoor access to sam.gov so that we couldn't even get in to their sam.gov account.
Wow.
And they didn't even know this. And I said, you need to understand. I said, there needs to be somebody, even if you're not doing that job that employee is doing, you need to understand what that employee is doing so that you can be a check and balance.
Mhm. Yeah. It's a mess, right? And it can and you be it's in the places that you least expect because you think cities they got their stuff together. Or this organization that's always on social media shining and having events, they got their stuff together. Then you go in there and you look and you go, oh my gosh, they don't have any systems in place. They don't
You have
even
no
know.
system. You
They,
you you you've got funding for a program, and you don't even have any way to know that your program was successful. You done took all these people grant money, and you don't even know how many people you gonna serve. You done told these people that you gonna serve 300 people, and last year you only served 15. Where are your other 200 and something people coming from?
and don't know, right? And there's not a plan to even get them. And a lot of and y'all don't make stuff up. And right now, I'm working with a group right now on reporting. Do not make up stuff. And that's how you get in trouble. That's how you wear orange. And we're not doing orange in 2023. We're not doing it at all. But you want to make, when you're even approaching grants, and I know grants are exciting and they're sexy and everybody wants to have a grant. When you're reviewing the request and you know that this is something that you're not ready for, just leave it alone and do something different. Like go to take a smaller, way. And Doc talked about the $11 million grant that she wrote. If you're approaching me to write your $11 million grant and you ain't got an accounting system in place, you haven't had an audit, just say, okay, well, thank you very much. I didn't, we'll work on getting stuff like that together and just going on. Just do it because there's some grant writers out here who will take your money. Who will take it? Knowing, even though grants aren't guaranteed, and if you have a grant writer who says it's guaranteed, run from them as well because grants are not guaranteed. But if I know for a fact that you have to have an audit, and most of them even now, Doc, even on a smaller scale, they didn't used to ask for them a whole lot, but they're starting to request these things more and more because somebody has to be held accountable for things. when you're getting into grant applications nowadays, and I blame it on COVID because COVID was a hot mess, and everybody was getting funded for stuff. Nobody was being held accountable for a lot of the stuff. So you're going to see more and more funders ask for things that will allow them to dig a little bit deeper into your operations than they did in the past. So you have to be prepared for these things, and you want to get systems in place, and you want to have people in place, and you want to have your board intact. You want to have accounting systems. You want to if you're getting $12 million and you're paying people, what's your payroll system? What are you using?
Absolutely.
You're not having people in 20 something.
Ty, that's one of the big things that I tell people all the time. I said, people look at me and they see me get all these wins, but they don't know how many years I've been working on getting that win. Mm-hmm. That water system that I was able to bring into the city of Tennille, that was almost a year project. Mm-hmm. And, it's a 3-year grant, but I had to do the work for a year. I had to do the work. I didn't, and I don't have a team that I can say, and number one, I don't have a team because I don't trust people like that. Mm-hmm. Because if you give me some raggedy data and I use your raggedy data, it's not you that's going to be in trouble for doing the raggedy data. It's me. Mm-hmm. So if I got to go behind you and double check your data, I might as well do it myself, because at that point, I'm just spending extra time, energy, and effort. Mm-hmm. And maybe one day I'll get to the point where I'll find somebody just like me.
Get away from these trust issues, right? I got trust issues. That's hiring staff and people like that to support you. That's a whole process as well, right? You gotta if I'm getting someone to collect data for me, or somebody who's going to be directing my program. Do they know what I know? If I'm the best person for the job, then I need to do the job. If somebody else can do it better, then that's why you delegate, and that's why you get people on your team to do the work that you want to do. But going back to collecting data and the work that you did for that year, that takes patience and that takes implementation. So a lot of times we'll get information and we sit on it, and then we just go apply for the grant. But you're like, what do I need to do to get ready for this thing, right?
And it takes strategy. Mm-hmm. If you were out here chasing every single grant that comes out, and you don't have a grant strategy, that's like at the start. Really, I start with my law enforcement agencies in September and October, and every agency that I work with, and I only pick 4 agencies a year. And the way that the agency leaders have started to reach out to me. Sometimes I feel like I'm one of those college athletes, when the recruiters come to recruit them to try to join their college.
I'm signing for them. I'm going like, let me put on this, right? You're a signing day. Gotcha. We got it.
And I mean, some of these agency leaders, they go all out for me. Like, they ask me when I come to their cities, they're like, what hotel do you like to stay at? What amenities do you need at the hotel? And, I'm always like, it has to be a Hilton property, and I got to have a Peloton bike. And one of them, he actually ended up putting me at the Partridge Hotel in Augusta one time because I wanted a Peloton bike before I came to his agency for the review in the morning. But, I sit down with them and we develop a whole grant strategy. And then when they come to me with, this grant, I said, is that on your strategy? Well, no, but I said, if it's not on your strategy, we're not going after it.
Right.
I said, if you want to go after it on your own, you go after it on your own, but it's not a we. I said, then that becomes a you.
And you set it up right up front, right? Because it's randomness sometimes that's what gets us in trouble. We don't have a plan. And that is what makes us chase everything. Because as soon as something else, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go here. A lot of times we leave a lot of things unfinished because we're too busy chasing other things. So instead of staying and working on this program, building some momentum in this program, applying for things that fit this program and building this program, we're off chasing something else, right? And this
absolutely.
And having collected data for that, and understanding who you're serving, what kind of data is important and what kind of data is relevant. I think a lot of people kind of miss the mark on that, where you have people who are don't know what outcomes are, or using sign-up sheets as their only reference point. how do you communicate to your funder, hey, this is how we solve the problem. The problem has been, this is what our process looks like, this is what our outcome looks like, this is the type of impact we are producing, right? Even with your, when you started your organization, when you had your daughter, right, and you're like, I'm gonna do this, that whole thing, whether it's in writing or not, is a process toward evaluation where you had, first of all, the thing that you did with your daughter appealed to somebody, right? So the neighbor was able to see the change that you made in your daughter, and she's come knocking on the door. Hey, doc, can you do for me what you did for your daughter? This is working, right? We can document. This is our case, right? We can document this. Oh yeah, I can do this for you because I did it for my daughter. Let me figure out what else, because you're a little bit more unique than her. You're a little bit older or whatever's going on. Let's figure this out. So now you're stopping and you're collecting some data along the way so that you can serve this person. You can document that. This works. Oh, and now you have the grandma and the mom, they're looking as well. So it's a domino effect, kind of like we're seeing what you're doing for her. Can you do that for us? At the end, you've kind of saved this whole little house and have created impact just like that on your street, right?
Yes.
So if you think about power and research methods or whatever, just the house on your street is powerful enough because you got 10 houses, whatever. So this makes sense, right? How do you do that in your city? What do you do, and how do you look at even when you're talking about your partnerships? What kind of data are you looking at to even communicate? Well, do you go by the number of partners that you have, their satisfaction with your work? What are some of the things that you're looking at when you're looking at your partners?
So when I'm looking at, like, okay, with my law enforcement agencies, the first thing that I'm looking at with law enforcement agencies is how many of your officers have crisis intervention training and how many are certified. I'm looking at their Facebook page. What are the people in your community saying about your officers?
Mm,
What are those comments like? When I look at, what's your leadership style?
mm.
And sometimes, like, there's some sheriffs that I won't work with because I've looked at their personal Facebook page and I'm like, you're too cringy.
I
You're cringy.
can't be associated with you, right? Because
Yes, I cannot be associated with you. Um, I look at, and a lot of people, when employers hire us, they look at all of our Facebook pages. They deep dive us.
Mhm,
And if you're going to be a nonprofit partner, you better deep dive that person. You
mhm,
better deep dive and know, like, there's some agencies where I would love to work with them, but they have no way to collect their data. I'm not coming in to help you build a whole data system
mhm.
unless it's just an off year for me and I feel like being very generous and spending a whole lot of time at your agency, and you're going to let me go ride my Peloton bike every day, or you're going to put a Peloton bike and a Peloton treadmill and all of that in your agency. I love Peloton. Peloton, if you're watching this, I would love a Peloton tread.
I need to let her be an ambassador for y'all. You can sponsor her. She can-
Yeah, Peloton, come on, send me that Peloton bike plus and the Peloton tread. Thank you.
I'll have my girl to give them a shout out when we do this, so we can have so they can see her. You talk about them, but you said what kind of data do they use? How they're collecting their stuff, because you don't want to partner with somebody who's raggedy, quote unquote.
Yes.
Because
They don't like when I was working on this mobile crisis one grant, and I was building, so what I built was where five sheriff's departments would all come together and we would embed a counselor with a deputy on mental health calls. And because these were all small rural sheriff's offices, no one had the resources to run this program by themselves, but bringing five of them in together, they were able to do it.
Mhm.
And, one agency I went to, I said, can you tell me how many mental health calls you had in 2020, 2020, 2021, and 2022? This particular agency was able to run a program, spit it out for me. Another agency that I went to, They said, well, I can tell you how many we had for the last 30 days. I said, okay, well, that's a start. I said, I said, can you tell me how many you had for the last year? Well, we don't use computer aided dispatch. I said, well, I was like, how are you dispatching? And the lady pulled out a punch card. Now, I used to be a dispatcher in the 90s. We used punch cards to dispatch in the 90s. And this particular sheriff's office was still using punch cards to dispatch in 2022.
Mm.
I said,
Yeah.
okay. I said, well, we're not going to be getting your data. I said, can you just give me a rough estimate? I said, because I'm not digging through boxes of punch cards.
Right. I mean, the thing is, investing in the technology that you need, when funders see that you are putting forth 1 foot, they'll want to support you. We see
Yes.
a lot of organizations who kind of sit here, not getting the systems that they need and not getting the website up, doing things like that and asking for support when you haven't supported yourself.
And can I just say that as a nonprofit organization, if you are a nonprofit organization without a website, shame on you, because there's a program called 48 in 48 where you can get your WordPress website built for you by professionals in 48 hours for free. And all you do is pay for the hosting. And if you have not applied for 48 in 48, then shame on you. If you were sitting up there with a website that's talking about hosted by Weebly because you're too cheap to pay for, your own domain and your own branding, shame on you. No,
Same.
nobody should give you any money. If you're not willing to invest in you, then don't expect other people to invest in you either.
I love that. We should close on that because that's why you should, be worth funding. And you have people who are like that, Doc. They're just and what folk don't understand is that nonprofit doesn't necessarily mean that everything should be free. People are going to give you some stuff, right? You talked about your in-kind contributions and what that looks like in your 990, but there are things that you have to invest in that you have to. If you're going to want to get other people to support you, you have to show that you are investing in your own mission. If you're Weebly, and I hate to see it, and you go there and they go whatever.weebly.com. I'm like, could you not pay $10? Even if you didn't get it for free, could you not pay $10 or so and so at Hotmail and Gmail and whatever? Could you not? There's Microsoft and things like that you can get this stuff for free. If you needed it for free, but even if it wasn't free, the investment is small. If you're an organization and you do not have $10, there's a problem. And I know that everybody's not fully funded, but if you don't have $10 in your organization, that's a problem. Maybe you should, think about another. And I don't want to, I don't want to be mean, but maybe you should think about doing something different until you can do
Well,
better, right?
it's not being mean, it's being realistic, it's being honest. And, I think we have to have honest conversations with people sometimes and
Mhm.
saying, you know what, like I told one of my friends, because she was putting her money into running her organization. And I said to her, I said, look, if your organization cannot sustain itself, then it's got to close. I said,
Mhm.
because what's not going to fund it is you, period.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like a business. You don't see Walmart funding itself. We
Mhm.
fund Walmart.
Mhm.
Yes, you have to invest in your business, but no, you are not the 100% sole funder of your business.
Mhm. I think that's what we're not getting from the ground up. How do you build in a way that you get these things without you're being the one who's doing all the work, right? Doing all the financing for it. This is where the team is important, why your board is important, why these partnerships are important. Understanding, hey, you kind of fell into the Dr. Mabry Foundation. You're like, okay, I started this for my daughter and whatever, and we got this license or what. But knowing that now I need other people to support me, I need to have some money if I'm going to take care of these folks who are coming from jail or whatever. How do I do that? I need to get up from my desk. I need to go over to the police department. Like I need to physically go over there, right? I need to form a relationship or build a relationship with them. I need to let them see why they need what I have. I show up as, oh my gosh, this is so devastating. I can't do this work and I can't do this. You showed up with, hey, this is, y'all need me because these folk over here not grad, they ain't got no GED, right? You're confident in your messaging, right? To the point that they're like, you know what, we really do need this. Like we really do need this. And you told State Farm, y'all, we need this. Here's my evidence. So that work that you do before you get there, then you see the funds, then you see the partners who are saying, you know what, yeah, you got enough money for 13 right now, but you're either gonna have to pick 13, or you're gonna have to say no to everybody else, or you're gonna have to find funds. But what happens? How do you find the funds? They help you find the funds because they're saying, hey, you're partnering with us. And when you tell this funder over here that you're partnering with this police department, they're like, oh, cool. Even if you don't have $1 trillion in the bank already, the fact that you're partnering with this police department, we trust you. We don't know you. We don't really know them, but we know they're a police department. So now we're willing to help you get to that next thing. I think for a lot of new organizations, especially, they think that we're just going to get started and then we don't have to do anything, but we're going. So I start paying out of my pocket for stuff because I don't go over here and build relationships. I don't attract the right board members. I just got board members who can sign papers and who can say, yeah, and that I can, that the state will approve that we can be a nonprofit organization, and we keep it moving, and wonder why you're still paying for stuff out of your pocket.
And if you are a nonprofit organization and your board members are not contributing financially to your board, shame on you. My board, we have a find it or fund it policy. I don't require all my board members to, write a check for $1,000. You can fundraise $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
You either find it or fund it. I don't care how you get it. You just need to have it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't care how you get it, right? And when you're talking about, paying out of your pocket for things, you have organizations who have these basic needs that have to be met, like your rent, your utilities. If you need to have that kind of stuff going on, I feel that if your board is paying something, if you've gotten them to do a give get or whatever, a lot of these basic needs would be met. And you don't have to worry about those things, right? You got, okay, well, I know for a fact that rent and utilities is covered because my board contributions are $30,000 or whatever, right? Or whatever, or our annual fundraiser is going to bring in $20,000 for certain because we require that our board does this amount of work for our annual fundraiser. So we know that we got that covered. Now, your job is to go out there and build the relationships and find the money and do all this stuff because you ain't got to worry about how the lights are going to stay on because your folk at the house are doing that. So you worry about doing the other things, right? Buying the furniture, I guess. Okay, Doc, we're gonna wrap it up. It's been a pleasure having you. You're gonna have to come back again because you just got all kinds of splashes going on. Every time you splash, I'm gonna bring you on the show so you can shoot a 3 for us. Let us know how you're doing with this. I really appreciate your being here. Tell us really, really quickly how we can find your foundation.
Absolutely. So my foundation is on all the social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. And I think we're even on Snapchat, and it's the Dr. Anise Mabry Foundation. Our Tiers, that's TIERS, Free Academy, is also on Instagram and Facebook. And we've got some videos on TikTok, but not a lot. But we are out there. Y'all find us, follow us. Our podcast network is Back to Us Radio Network. That's back, the number 2 Us Radio Network. The podcast is also a part of the nonprofit, but that's a whole nother show. How do you roll your podcast into your nonprofit? Stay tuned.
Okay, and tell y'all about how to roll your podcast into your nonprofit. And all these social media handles, right? And you mentioned, and I know we're supposed to be closing right now, but that you're kind of embedded across social media. And I tell people all the time, that little one question on your grant application that says, your social media, you see that in a lot of now, is not there just to be there. Sometimes it's there so that the funder can dig a little bit deeper and find out what's really going on with your organization, because you can hire a great grant writer and they can say all the pretty nice things about your organization and they can just make you look so good on paper. And then we want to dig a little bit deeper. Well, let's run over here to Facebook and see if they're talking the same talk that they're talking in this grant application. Let's see if their mission is aligning. If you're on Facebook and your mission is, about a food pantry, and you're over here in your grant application and you say you're doing, something completely different, there's a problem. So you want to make sure all those things align. Check out Doc social media, Dr. Mabry Foundation. She's everywhere. She is splashing. You won't find her as Dr. Splash, but I'm trying to get her to use that handle. Maybe she will soon, because she's definitely out here making splashes, y'all. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye bye.